Robin Wright had a question asked of her. There's a little bit of a thing going on around Forrest Gump since this film brought back, Robin Wright and Tom Hanks in a film together. They haven't been together since Forrest Gump, right? And so she was been doing the rounds, the marketing rounds to talk about this film. And so some stuff about her character Jenny has come back into light. And it seems like now is the time where everyone's like, hey, let's air out our grievances with Forrest Gump that was made 30 or 40 years ago. You know what I mean?
Oh, like
30
yeah, a
years
long
ago.
time ago.
So they're like, let's go ahead and talk about all of our 2024 problems with this movie. And it's
Mhm.
not just this. There's a whole lot of things. People have an issue that he played someone with special needs. They have an issue with the way that, Black people were portrayed in the film. They have an
There's a
issue.
lot of things you can have complaints about with that
But
movie,
Forrest
but
Gump is a good movie. It's a
oh,
good real life movie. It doesn't matter
and
what problems you have, what painting, in what light it is. It's a good movie.
and I mean, I've talked about this, I think, openly. Like, I don't enjoy the movie. It's not my thing.
Okay.
But just look at the numbers, and I guarantee, like, the audience score or even the money it's made, it's probably pretty high.
Yeah, it's very high. Now, I do apologize for this website having billions of pop-up ads, so forgive that because it's super annoying. But The Independent wrote this article. Forrest Gump Robin Wright hits back at critics who called Jenny anti-feminist. All right,
Mhm.
so that's pretty cool. She's clapping back to some of the woke attacks, you might say, that they're throwing at her Forrest Gump film. All right.
Mhm.
So Jenny's arc within the film, which takes her from childhood, sexual abuse through drugs use, and ultimately death, has been widely criticized in the 30 years since the movie came out. The Independent, blah blah blah, called it the most problematic film ever made, on the list of the most problematic films ever made, thanks to the film's um, slut shaming toward Robin Wright's Jenny. So they believe that it paints her character in a slut shaming anti feminist fashion because she was a bit loose. And the film painted it in a negative light because she got AIDS and died.
Mhm.
And so they're saying that you're slut shaming. You're slut shaming because you're having negative consequences for this character who did these things. All right.
And negative real consequences, though.
Negative real consequences. So this is what she had to say in response to that. No, it's not about that. Wright responded. People have said she's Voldemort to Forrest. So basically, in saying like she's a villain in the story in some
Mhm.
capacity. I wouldn't choose that as a reference, but she was kind of selfish. I don't think it's a punishment that she gets AIDS. She was so promiscuous that was the selfishness that she did to Forrest. That was the selfishness that she did to Forrest. So basically saying like the focus is the idea that she in some ways is a villain, not, but she's more like a real life villain, right? It's not so much as a villain with an evil plan, but it's the wrongness. It's not the promiscuousness is the problem of her
Mhm.
character. She wasn't trying to slut shame or be anti-feminist. But the idea is that selfishness, her focus on herself
Yeah.
and never taking into consideration Forrest's desires, needs, and wants to be, you know, I could be your man kind of thing. You know what I mean? And
Well, you gotta never mind.
but she also said he was in love with her from day one, and she was just flightly and running and doing coke and hooking up with a Black Panther. Um, so basically, she's saying that the character is deeper and the story is deeper to this than just it's anti-feminist. Like we're gonna
Oh,
hate on
yeah.
her because she was loose or whatever. And
Well,
she really hits it. It's the point of saying like, hey, selfishness is not a good thing. But the interesting thing about that is she's kind of highlighting in a lot of ways the negativity, or at least the negative foundation of what this argument being presented to her is. The idea that saying that it's slut shaming, it's anti-feminist, and she responds with, no, that character was selfish. And so they're seeing the symptoms from both angles, and she's combating it with saying, hey, that's selfish behavior. And so in some ways, she might be exposing the idea that, hey, a lot of these feministic ideas is kind of just selfishness. It's inconsiderateness. You know what I mean?
I mean, if we want to call anybody a slut in that movie, I mean, what was Forrest Gump's mom doing to get him in school?
Right.
I mean, she was just doing all she could to get him into school.
It's so fascinating that, even when someone is deep into the ideology. Like Robin
Mhm.
Wright's not out here being anti-woke. She's not out here saying I'm going to vote for Trump tomorrow. You know what I mean? Like
I mean,
she's not literally, and the creators of this film, everything. Like Tom Hanks is super liberal. He's super liberal. He's
mhm.
comically liberal. And the idea that they're still coming after
Mhm.
them, almost in some ways eating their own. You know what I mean? Like trying to trap their own people. And when I
And
say there, I'm talking about this really far left Hollywood ideology
oh yeah.
culture, you
Well,
know?
I mean, but not even just that. Like, this was a film that was done a long time ago, and then on top of it was made a long time ago, it was the timeline that the movie is set is even longer than when they made the film. So it's like they're going back twice
Mm.
here, if that makes sense what I'm saying. And so it was a different time in filmmaking. And why are we critiquing it now?
Well, also, here's the thing, we don't need to critique it. A movie like this
No.
can be and should be made today, but they won't because they call it problematic. I really like Robin Wright's take and saying, hey, it's not what you're trying to make this out to be. The story's deeper than that. It's about
Yeah.
selfishness. One person has their focus on other people, and one person has their focus on themselves. And the interesting thing about the story that it's built on complexity, which means she's not really a villain. What she is damaged. What she is traumatized by her
Oh,
father.
yeah.
You know what I mean? And it leads to all of these horrible things in life. And it's crazy to me that they would be like, this is anti-feminist and slut shaming, when it's like, just look around, open up the news. This happens on a daily basis. When someone is victimized at a young age like that,
Well, this
it
is
turns into bad stuff in life like this. This is like a cautionary tale, you know?
I mean, this is more real life than anything that we see today. I mean, we can't
Yeah.
all put like Captain Marvel on film. All women can't be Captain Marvel.
Yeah, no, this is real life, believe it or not, is actually okay, so Hollywood, feminist thing, do you wanna get the audiences of women? You gotta be making real life stories because women want
Oh,
real
yeah.
life. It's men who like fantasy stuff. It's men who like superheroes and wizards and you know what I mean? It's women who like real life stories and real life complexity. Not to say that men don't, men do as well, in the same way that women on some level also like superheroes. But if we're talking about generalizations, like women will love Forrest Gump. We just watched, like, it's been a long time since I watched Forrest Gump, and my wife watched it when she was just a kid. And so she didn't even remember the movie. We watched it like last year, and she was
Yeah.
like, "It's a really good movie. Like, it's really good." And I was like, "Yeah," because they knew how to make a real life story back then. And today, they just brush off a really good story that has a lot of depths, complex lessons in it, and just brush it off as, "Oh, it's slut shaming." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it's really sad to see. Obviously, everything Robin Wright does is like, I'm not into. But I'm proud to see that she stood up for her film and didn't try to apologize for it. That's one thing that if she gave any ground and said, maybe it was a different time or whatever, if she said something like that, then I would be like, oh, heck no. Don't give them the ground. Stand firm. The film is a good film. It's a good story. There's not anti-feminism here. It's real life. That's what this film is.